It's early morning in Rome. You wake up in a cramped apartment. The city smells like smoke and bread. You pull on your sandals and head out, already doing the math in your head, because prices changed again yesterday. They always do now. The baker shrugs when you ask why a loaf of bread costs more. Grain shipment was late, he says. Or maybe it wasn't. No one really knows anymore. You pass a notice nailed to a wall. Another new tax. Another decree, signed by someone you've never heard of. Appointed by someone everyone has heard of, but no longer trusts. At the forum, people are arguing, loudly. Everyone has a theory. Some say foreigners are hoarding food. Some say the gods are angry. Some say elites are lying. Others say elites are too stupid to lie properly. Someone swears there's a secret society controlling the currency. Someone else swears the army is about to save everyone. You don't know what to believe. You just know your pay hasn't changed. Your food costs more. And the people in charge don't seem particularly qualified. And here's the thing that would surprise future historians. This wasn't Rome at its weakest. This was Rome after centuries of dominance, after conquering half the known world, after inventing roads, plumbing, law, engineering, systems so good we still use their bones today. Rome didn't collapse because it was stupid. It collapsed because it stopped rewarding competence and started rewarding loyalty, belief, and vibes. And once that happened, everything else followed. On this episode of Bear Markets and Bad Decisions, we're talking about how Rome fell from the inside out. Not because of barbarians at the gates, because the empire quietly abandoned meritocracy, turned against expertise, and let conspiracy theory replace reality. This isn't a story about ancient ruins. It's a story about what happens when a system stops knowing who it should listen to. And if that feels a little too familiar, yeah, you're not imagining it. Act 1. When Rome actually worked, and why that's the scariest part. Before we talk about Rome falling apart, we need to talk about something people forget. Rome worked. Not perfectly, not peacefully, not ethically, but mechanically, systemically. It was the closest thing the ancient world ever had to a functioning machine. Imagine being a citizen during Rome's peak. You wake up in a city lit by oil lamps, hear the rush of clean water from the aqueducts, and walk across roads so well engineered that pieces of them still exist today. Your city has sewage systems, fire brigades, public baths, grain distribution, stable currency, and a legal system that, while deeply flawed, at least acknowledges that laws exist. This wasn't vibes. This wasn't hope. This wasn't conspiracy. This was competence. Rome didn't run because people prayed hard enough. It ran because qualified people ran it. Engineers who knew what a load-bearing arch was. Surveyors who understood geometry. Administrators who could handle logistics. Generals who actually studied warfare instead of cosplaying it. A civil service chosen, brace yourself, because they knew how to do the job. There were checks. There were balances. There were institutions. Rome was messy, but it had adults in the room. Rome's rise wasn't magic, it was merit. The newly conquered province wasn't governed by the guy who yelled the loudest. It was governed by someone who had come up through the system, proven themselves, survived scrutiny, and earned their position. You wanted to move grain from Egypt to the capital? There was a plan. You wanted to build a new road connecting Gaul to Hispania? There were experts. You wanted the currency to remain stable? There were treasurers who understood math, real math, not whatever the local tavern mathematician believed after 3 goblets of wine. For centuries, Rome expanded not because it was lucky, but because competence compounds. And then, slowly, quietly, that changed. Not overnight, not in some dramatic, the emperor flipped a switch moment, but gradually, like corrosion. People still looked like they were doing their jobs. The buildings still stood. The temples still glowed. The market still opened at dawn. But behind the scenes, something vital slipped. Merit stopped being the passport to power. Loyalty began replacing expertise. Political survival mattered more than competence. And positions that once required skills now required flattery. Rome didn't fall when the barbarians showed up. Rome fell when the talent pipeline dried up. Not enough engineers, not enough planners, not enough administrators who understood why inflation was rising or why grain shipments were late. The empire still looked like Rome, but it no longer functioned like Rome, and the people felt it first. Small things went wrong, and then bigger things. And then things so obvious and stupid that future historians wrote about them like they were comedy sketches. That's the shift this episode is really about. How a system built on competence became a system built on compliance, and how that one change broke everything. Act 2. The moment Rome stopped trusting expertise. This was the moment the cracks started to appear. Not with a bang, but with a shrug. Because Rome didn't suddenly wake up one morning and say, let's replace the competent people with idiots. No empire is ever that honest. It happened slowly, like a bad reboot. The first sign, expertise became optional. The earliest red flag wasn't a war or a famine. It was job postings, metaphorically speaking. Positions that once required experience, education, or at minimum basic literacy, were suddenly filled by people whose greatest qualification was knowing the emperor personally. Imagine your entire government being ran by the guy in high school who insists he just has really good instincts. Rome had been an empire built on the competence of engineers, military strategists, accountants, agronomists, urban planners, legal scholars, and now Rome started handing out jobs like party favors. You want to run the treasury? Do you understand finance? No? But you threw a really great party? Close enough. You want to command a legion? Ever held a sword? No? But the emperor likes you? Okay, soldier boy, go nuts. And every time someone qualified pushed back, they were met with the ancient version of, stop being dramatic, it'll be fine. The second sign, conspiracies filled the vacuum. Here's a fun economic fact. Conspiracy theories spike when institutions break down. Why? Because when people no longer trust experts, they just start trusting the loudest person in the room. And Rome had no shortage of loud men. Suddenly, everything was blamed on witches, foreigners, divine punishment, omens, shadowy elites, strange clouds, astrologers, or that one senator with shifty eyes. You know who I'm talking about. If TikTok had existed, Rome would have had a whole side of a platform dedicated to 5 hidden signs Jupiter is angry with you. The economy wasn't cratering because the empire stopped investing in basic infrastructure. No. It was obviously a curse. Grain shipments weren't delayed because the supply chain dissolved. Nope. Sabotage by foreigners. Inflation wasn't rising because Rome debased its currency. Come on now. It was the gods punishing people for dancing too much during festivals. When expertise dies, nonsense thrives. The third sign. Loyalty became the only currency. Rome used to reward competence with promotions. But once emperors got paranoid, and they always got paranoid, the safest thing you could be wasn't smart, it was loyal. Dangerously loyal. Suddenly the question wasn't, is this person qualified? It was, will this person betray me? And that's how you get a government full of yes men. No pushback, no warnings, no adult in the room saying, hey, maybe melting down the silver in all our coins to fund one more temple to your ego is a bad idea. Silence is expensive, and Rome was about to pay the bill. The fourth sign, the people felt it first. This is the part that's near and dear to my heart. Regular Romans could feel the decline before the elites could see it. Why? Because collapsing systems hit the bottom before they hit the top. Everyday Romans noticed grain shipments arriving late, bread getting smaller, coins feeling lighter, jobs going to idiots, taxes rising, roads not being repaired, soldiers not being paid on time, and the growing sense that something is wrong but nobody in charge seems to care. Daily life became friction. Little inconveniences at first, then bigger ones. Then a slow grind of dysfunction that starts to feel normal. Rome didn't burn in a single catastrophic moment. It dripped out through incompetence. Because when you stop trusting experts, and experts stop being allowed to do their job, you don't get a revolution. You just get decay. Quiet decay. Invisible decay. The kind of decay people can sense but can't quite name. And by the time Rome finally figured it out, the damage was already done. Act 3. What decay actually looks like and feels like. Decay has a PR problem. People think it looks like explosions, riots, flaming chariots in the streets. But most collapse doesn't look like a disaster movie. It looks like annoyances. Just tiny cracks, hairline fractures. Things that used to work smoothly suddenly feeling off. Rome didn't fall because barbarians poured through the gates. Rome fell because the barbarians could smell how weak things already were. And everyday Romans, they saw the downfall in slow motion. First, the money got weird. The Roman denarius used to be the gold standard of reliability. Pure silver, consistent weight, accepted everywhere. But the emperors kept needing more money. For wars, palaces, vanity projects, and that one emperor who tried to light the night sky by setting an entire mountain on fire. You can look it up. Rome had some characters. So they did the ancient version of quantitative easing on steroids. They cut the silver content of the coins. Real Romans noticed immediately. They'd hand a coin to a merchant, and he'd hold it up, squint a little, and go, feels lighter. Suddenly bread cost more, oil cost more, your rent doubled. Not because the goods changed, but because the money did. This wasn't inflation you could chart. This was inflation you could feel in your hands. Second, everything took longer. Rome used to have elite logistics. The whole empire ran like a massive Amazon Prime delivery network. Goods from Africa, spices from the East, grain from Egypt, all moving like clockwork. And then, delays. Small at first. A shipment arriving a day late, then a week, then a month. Merchants blamed storms. The government blamed sabotage. Everyone blamed foreign elements. Nobody blamed the real reason. Incompetence at the top had gutted the system. When leadership doesn't understand logistics, logistics doesn't understand leadership. Third, Infrastructure stopped being maintained. Rome's collapse didn't start with armies. It started with potholes. Roads that used to last for decades suddenly had cracks, then holes, then full sections washed out. Aqueducts that once delivered clean water began leaking, then sagging, then collapsing. Imagine living in the greatest empire in the world, and suddenly you can't trust your water. And maintenance crews? They used to be staffed with skilled engineers. Now, it was the emperor's cousins who had a good feeling about bricks. Fourth, public services got chaotic. Hospitals understaffed. The military underpaid. Fire brigades politicized. Courts a mess. A crime committed in Rome could take a year to even hit a judge's desk, because the judges were busy doing what judges shouldn't be doing: playing politics, kissing rings, currying favor. Rome became a place where nobody could get anything fixed. Not your roof, not your street, not your legal disputes, not your safety. Fifth, the people just got tired. This is the big one, the silent killer of empires. People got tired. Not angry, not rebellious, just tired. Tired of shortages, tired of corruption, tired of experts who didn't know anything, tired of leaders who acted like entertainers, tired of conspiracy theories, tired of everything being broken. And when people get tired, they stop fighting for the system. They stop participating and retreat inward. They look for shortcuts, self-preservation, shadow economies. Trust dies long before the empire does. And that's when the external pressures hit. For centuries, Rome had fought wars from a position of strength. But by the time the enemies returned, the Goths, the Vandals, the Huns, Rome wasn't strong anymore. It was fragile, exposed, turned inward, distracted, led by people who mistook loyalty for competence and theatrics for governance. So when the threats came, Rome folded faster than a cheap lawn chair. They weren't defeated by force, they were defeated by entropy. Systems fail from the inside before the outside delivers the final blow. Act 4. When meritocracy dies, markets follow. Here's the thing economists don't put on graphs, but absolutely should. When a society stops promoting people based on competence, the economy stops functioning based on logic. Rome didn't collapse because of one bad emperor. Rome collapsed because it lost its operating system. And that operating system was meritocracy. Step 1. The best people stop getting the best jobs. Rome used to have one of the strongest merit-based bureaucracies in history. Engineers built aqueducts that still exist today. Administrators ran provinces larger than modern countries. Tax collectors understood actual math. And then the emperors started replacing experts with loyalists. Suddenly, the guy in charge of the grain supply wasn't a logistics genius. He was the emperor's friend's nephew who once said, "I like bread." The man overseeing Rome's finances, not a seasoned accountant, just someone who once complimented the emperor on his chariot. And in every case, the pattern was the same. You hire loyalists. Loyalists hire their loyalists. Loyalists fire the experts. The system collapses under the people who have no idea what they're doing. Competence drains out like water through a cracked bowl. Step 2. Markets become emotional instead of rational. Markets need stability, information, predictability. What they got instead was vibes. Under bad leadership, The economy stops being driven by fundamentals and starts being driven by fear, rumor, superstition, and palace drama. In Rome, a general sneezed wrong, grain prices spiked. An astrologer made a prediction. Merchants hoarded food. A senator whispered about a new tax. Everyone panicked. This is what happens when people don't trust institutions. Markets start doing their own chaotic thing. Step 3. Corruption becomes the default setting. When loyalty replaces competence, corruption isn't a byproduct, it's the framework. Want a job? Pay someone. Want protection? Pay someone. Want your case heard in court? Pay someone. Want your sewage system fixed? Well, good luck. Rome created a shadow economy, where the only functioning part of the system was bribery. One historian described it as a world where every favor had a price, but none of the prices were stable. That's the worst possible economic model. Not capitalism, not socialism, chaosism. Step 4. The state stops solving problems. Think of a modern city where the bridges aren't inspected, the water system is failing, the government can't pass anything, the experts have been sidelined. The people in charge spend all day performing for supporters instead of governing. That was Rome for decades. Disasters piled up. Grain shortages, floods, fires, border crises, monetary chaos, infrastructure failures. And instead of solving them, leaders just made speeches. Step 5. The public loses faith. The most dangerous collapse of all. This is the final economic domino. Romans didn't stop caring because they were lazy. They stopped caring because the system gave them nothing to believe in. They saw leaders who weren't qualified, policies made for political loyalty, tax money misused, experts exiled, competence punished, corruption rewarded. The middle class, the real backbone of Rome, lost hope first. And once the middle collapses, the economy follows. When institutions fail long enough, people start looking for answers anywhere. Fanatics, conspiracy theorists, strongmen, miracle cures, fringe movements, simple solutions to complex problems. Rome had all of it. And once the conspiracy fever starts, the economy can't anchor anything. Hunger grows, confidence shrinks, investment freezes, risk skyrockets, collapse accelerates. And here's the part nobody likes to acknowledge. By the time Rome actually fell, the fall had already happened. The empire collapsed long before the walls were breached. The enemy wasn't the barbarians. The enemy was internal decay that hollowed out the system until a strong breeze could knock it over. Act 5. The echo we're hearing right now. So here's the part where history stops feeling ancient and starts feeling uncomfortably familiar. Rome didn't fall because one emperor made a bad decision. Rome fell because a series of small, quiet shifts stacked on top of each other until the whole system leaned sideways. And when you look around today, you can see the same signs. Sign 1. Loyalty jobs instead of competence jobs. Every time an expert gets replaced with someone whose main qualification is they're on the team, Rome nods from the grave. Every time a scientific position goes to someone who doesn't understand science, a regulatory role goes to someone who doesn't believe in regulation, an economic office goes to someone who doesn't understand economics, an investigation is run by someone who will never say the word guilty. The system loses a brick. Not enough to make the whole thing fall, just enough to tilt the floor a little. But floors don't untilt themselves. Sign 2. Institutions turning into performance stages. When agencies, courts, and leadership positions become places for theatrics instead of governance, That's screaming Rome. Rome had emperors who held parades while the water systems broke. We have leaders posting victory slogans while infrastructure reports read like horror novels. Rome had political factions that rewarded obedience over expertise. We have entire ecosystems built on feeling right instead of being right. And markets, they feel that long before voters do. Sign 3. The rise of conspiratorial thinking. When expertise dies, something always replaces it. Not silence, not calm, conspiracies. Rome had omens, magical thinking, astrologers in high office. The mobs convinced that the gods were punishing grain prices. We have shadow cabal theories, fake charts, cult-like followings, economic takes built on vibes, and people who believe their favorite influencer knows more than the central bank. In both cases, the pattern is identical. People stop trusting institutions because institutions stop earning trust. Sign 4. The middle class grinding down. Rome's middle class didn't disappear overnight. They simply got squeezed until they stopped believing the system had anything left for them. Declining purchasing power? Check. Stagnant wages? Check. Skyrocketing essentials? Check. A political class more invested in fighting each other than helping citizens? Double check. And just like Rome, the real danger wasn't desperation. It was disillusionment. When people stop believing their efforts matter, economies don't just slow down. They rot from within. Sign 5. The slow erosion that feels normal until it isn't. Rome didn't have a dramatic single fall. It was a long fade. Years of experts fired, institutions weakened, talented people sidelined, corruption normalized, public trust evaporating, and leaders prioritizing loyalty over truth. And then the day came when the problems were too big for the remaining institutions to handle. Not because problems were new, because the institutions were hollow. And here's the unsettling truth. Economies don't collapse when enemies attack. Economies collapse when competence does. Every time someone unqualified steps into a role that used to require expertise, we shift 1 inch closer to Rome's trajectory. Every time conspiracy replaces evidence, we shift another inch. Every time a loyalist gets promoted over a qualified citizen, another inch. None of those inches feel dramatic. They feel like business as usual. But history is clear. Collapse is just the last inch of a very long slide. Act 6. How societies saved themselves, and how Rome didn't. Here's the good news about collapse. It's not inevitable, it's cumulative. Rome didn't fall because the gods abandoned them. It fell because the adults in the room did. And that's what this final act is really about. What it takes for a society to pull itself out of the spiral instead of waiting for the impact. Because while Rome went down swinging, other societies didn't. They changed course. They rebuilt trust. They recentered competence. So what have we learned from the past? Lesson 1. Strong institutions don't happen by accident. Rome didn't start with a broken system. They let it become one. The Republic built brilliant guardrails, checks and balances, rotating public offices, standards of expertise, a culture that prized civic duty. Then slowly, quietly, the guardrails turned into decorations. The modern lesson? Institutions rot gradually, then fail suddenly. But they can be strengthened gradually too. Every time a qualified person is hired, every time a safeguard is restored, every time oversight is taken seriously, that's a stitch in the safety net. Lesson 2. Expertise is not elitism, it's infrastructure. Rome dismissed its experts at the exact moment it needed them the most. Engineers ignored. Economists, yes, they had early versions, sidelined. Generals replaced by political favorites. Agronomists overruled by superstition. And crops failed. And roads crumbled. And bad decisions multiplied like gremlins in a car wash. You cannot run a modern society on vibes. Not a power grid, not a financial system, not a military, not a public health network. A society that values expertise builds resiliency. A society that punishes expertise builds mythology. And myths make terrible economic policy. Lesson 3. Trust is a currency, and when it runs out, everything costs more. Rome lost trust long before it lost territory. The plebeians stopped believing the Senate cared. The Senate stopped believing the emperor could lead. And the emperor stopped believing anyone would tell him the truth. Once trust evaporates, every function of society becomes more expensive. Trade, governance, peacekeeping, justice, elections, even basic cooperation. When nobody trusts anyone, everything slows, everything corrodes, and everything becomes harder to fix. Modern economies experience this too. Low trust means high friction. Every hidden fee, every extra verification step, every court battle, every political stunt is a tax on stability. Lesson 4. When conspiracies replace reality, reality hits back. Rome's conspiracy culture didn't just distort the truth, it distorted policy. If the grain shortage was the gods, then no one fixed the ports. If border conflicts were omens, then no one reinforced the defenses. If economic collapse was divine punishment, then no one balanced the budget. Conspiracies give people comfort, but comfort is not the same as direction. And modern societies who face the same trap, if enough people believe the problem isn't real, the real problem is now unstoppable. Lesson 5. Decline isn't fast, but recovery isn't either. Most societies don't wake up in crisis. They drift into it. Slow erosion, slow cynicism, slow incompetence, slow disengagement. But societies that recover do the opposite. Slow rebuilding, slow restoration of norms, slow cultural shift toward accountability, slow reprofessionalization of institutions. Recovery is boring. That's what makes it effective. Collapse is exciting. That's what makes it seductive. We're not Rome, but we rhyme with it. We're living through a moment where expertise is questioned, conspiracy thrives, institutions wobble, truth competes with entertainment, loyalty is rewarded over competence, and people feel increasingly alienated from the system that's supposed to serve them. But Rome didn't fall because these things happened. It fell because nobody corrected them when they did. And that's the message of this episode. Civilizations don't survive by accident. They survive by course correction. Not once, not dramatically, but constantly. And the people who decide whether we drift toward Rome or away from it aren't emperors. They're citizens. People who vote, speak up, ask better questions, demand expertise, reward competence, and refuse to mistake noise for leadership. The difference between decline and renewal often comes down to a single boring word: maintenance. Not glamorous, not heroic, but absolutely necessary. Well, that was our little stroll through the Roman Empire. Casual bedtime listening. If this episode made you feel a little uneasy, good. That's not panic, that's pattern recognition kicking in. Rome isn't scary because it fell. Rome is scary because it worked, until it didn't. And by the time the collapse became obvious, the real damage had already been done, quietly, slowly, and in plain sight. The good news? History isn't a horror movie, it's a field manual. Once you've seen the pattern, you start spotting it everywhere, in policy, in leadership, in institutions, in the moments when competence gets sidelined and vibes take over. We tend to talk a lot about vibes on this podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, or if it made you look at the news a little differently, do me a favor. Follow or subscribe, leave a review, comment, or send this to someone who still thinks Rome fell in a day. It genuinely helps more than you think. This has been Bear Markets and Bad Decisions. I'm Heather Shell, and until next week, remember, empires don't fall when the walls crack. They fall when nobody's left who knows how to fix them.